In the late Cretaceous deserts of what is now Mongolia, evolution sculpted a creature so strange, so seemingly contradictory, it defies initial logic. Its silhouette is dominated by one terrifying feature: 3 colossal claws on each hand, scythes of bone stretching nearly a meter long. They are the largest claws known from any animal, ever. For decades, they have fueled our nightmares and our pop culture depictions of the ultimate predator. But what if that assumption is completely wrong? What if their true function was something far stranger, and in its own way, even more terrifying? Now let us follow the evidence written in the fossil record, decode the science hidden in the bones, and witness the final verdict in a battle millions of years in the making. Our investigation begins in 1948 in the fossil-rich badlands of the Nemegt Formation. A joint Soviet-Mongolian expedition unearthed several gigantic, flattened claws. They were so bizarre, so unlike anything seen before, that the paleontologists who first studied them theorized they belonged to a gigantic turtle-like reptile, hence its scientific name, Therizinosaurus coloniformis, the Scythe Lizard in the form of a turtle. The name captured the weapon, but the identity of its owner remained a profound mystery. For years, these claws were the only clues we had, isolated pieces of evidence from a prehistoric crime scene, with the victim and the culprit both missing. Without a body, speculation ran rampant. The sheer scale and intimidating profile of these appendages painted the picture of a super predator, an unparalleled killer stalking the Cretaceous floodplains. This image became cemented in the public consciousness. A dinosaur with blades for hands is an irresistible monster, a natural movie villain. The logic seems simple. Nature does not evolve a 3-foot blade for show. It must be for attack, for defense, for carving through the flesh and bone of its rivals and its prey. The initial classification placed it within the Theropoda, the same group that includes Tyrannosaurus and Velociraptor, the beast-footed dinosaurs, which are almost exclusively carnivorous. This association only strengthened the case for Therizinosaurus as a terrifying predator. It appeared to be an open and shut case. The weapon was found, the suspect's family had a known history of violence, and the verdict was rendered in museum displays and documentaries worldwide: killer. But the fossil record is a patient witness. As more expeditions returned to the Nemegt, further remains of this enigmatic animal began to surface. And with each new bone, the case for the prosecution began to crumble. A more complete skeleton, belonging to a close relative named Alxosaurus, and later, more Therizinosaurus material itself, revealed an animal that made no sense as an apex predator. The skull was disproportionately small, housing a delicate, toothless beak suited for cropping plants, not tearing flesh. Its neck was long and slender, more like a giraffe than a tyrannosaur. Most damningly, its body was wide and heavy-set, with a massive gut cavity suggesting a complex digestive system for processing large amounts of fibrous vegetation. Its feet were broad and supported by 4 forward-facing toes, an anatomy ill-suited for the agile pursuit of prey. This was not the body of a killer. This was the chassis of a high-capacity herbivore. The evidence was in direct, shocking conflict. The claws screamed predator, but the skeleton whispered plant-eater. This is the central paradox of Therizinosaurus, the contradiction that turns this paleontological investigation on its head. How do we reconcile the scythes of a monster with the body of a browser? To solve this riddle, we must look closer at the primary evidence itself, the claws. Raw size is a blunt metric. Their design, their fine structure, holds the key. Were they truly optimized for combat, or have we been misreading the evidence entirely, blinded by their terrifying appearance? To answer that question, we must treat the claw not as a medieval weapon, but as a piece of high-performance biological hardware. When we move beyond its intimidating length and analyze its design through the lens of modern biomechanics, the myth of the super predator collapses entirely. My analysis of its form and function reveals three critical flaws in the combat hypothesis. First, and most decisively, is the curvature. A predator's claw, from an eagle's talon to the sickle claw of a Deinonychus, is deeply recurved. This hook shape is essential for piercing hide and locking onto struggling prey, ensuring the target cannot escape the grasp. When we examine the holotype claw of Therizinosaurus, we see a structure that is remarkably straight. Its gentle curve is wholly unsuited for hooking and holding. Any attempt to grapple a large, powerful animal like a contemporaneous Tarbosaurus would likely fail, the claw slipping free without inflicting a truly debilitating wound. It was not a hook designed for flesh. Second, there is the question of structural integrity. While immense, the claws were not solid daggers of bone. They were extensions of the finger bones, covered in a keratin sheath, much like our own fingernails, albeit on a gigantic scale. The underlying bone core was surprisingly thin and lightweight for its size. Computer-aided stress simulations, a technique known as finite element analysis, help us understand the forces these structures could withstand. Such analysis reveals that these claws were poorly optimized for high-impact stress. A powerful slash against the bony armor of an ankylosaur or the thick femur of a tyrannosaur would concentrate immense force on a fragile structure. The risk of a fracture, a break that would spell doom for the animal, was extraordinarily high. Evolution does not favor weapons that shatter on their first use. This was not a biological broadsword. It was more akin to a delicate, specialized tool. Finally, we must consider the machinery powering these tools, the arms and shoulders. The forelimbs of Therizinosaurus were long and powerful, certainly, but the muscle attachment points on the bones do not suggest the explosive, rapid-fire slashing motions of a predator. The anatomy points to a wide range of motion, but one optimized for sweeping, deliberate movements, for reach and for pulling, not for punching or stabbing. The entire chassis, from the shoulder girdle to the wrist, appears engineered for sustained, lower force work, rather than the split-second violence of a hunt. With the combat theory scientifically dismantled, the true function begins to emerge from the evidence. We must re-examine the creature as a whole: the small, beaked head, the long, graceful neck, the cavernous gut, and the giant, plodding feet. These are not disparate, contradictory parts. They are integrated components of a highly sophisticated herbivore. This was an animal built to process industrial quantities of vegetation. In this context, the claws are not a mystery. They are the final, brilliant piece of the puzzle. They were not weapons of war, but tools of harvest. Imagine the late Cretaceous forests of Mongolia. They were a competitive arena, not just for predators and prey, but among the plant-eaters themselves. Low-browsing ankylosaurs and herds of mid-level browsing hadrosaurs consumed vast amounts of foliage. To thrive, Therizinosaurus needed an edge, a way to access a food resource that its competitors could not. This is where its unique adaptations come into play. Standing over 15 feet tall and possessing an incredible reach with its arms and neck, it could already access higher branches. But the claws were the game changer. It would have used these incredible appendages as biological grappling hooks. Reaching high into the canopy, it could hook entire boughs laden with leaves, and with the immense power of its arms and body weight, pull them down to its beak. It was a living browse harvester. The motion was not a violent slash, but a methodical, powerful rake, systematically stripping trees and shrubs of their foliage. This hypothesis is powerfully supported by chemical evidence locked within the fossils of its relatives. Isotope analysis of the bones of other therizinosaurs from North America has confirmed a completely herbivorous diet. These chemical fingerprints, preserved for millions of years, are irrefutable proof from the molecular level. The so-called Scythe Lizard was, without a doubt, a plant-eater. And here we arrive at the truth behind its terrifying nature. The terror of Therizinosaurus was not for other dinosaurs, but for the ecosystem itself. A 5-ton animal with this hyper-efficient feeding mechanism would have been an engine of environmental change. A single Therizinosaurus, or a small group, could methodically defoliate a section of forest with an efficiency no other creature could match. The sound of its presence would not have been a predator's roar, but the incessant cracking and shearing of branches, the crash of falling timber, and the constant processing of plant matter. Its power was not measured in bite force, but in its unparalleled ability to consume and reshape its world. Now that we understand the hardware, we must assess its ultimate impact. How does this recontextualized giant fare in the final power ranking? The challenge, then, is one of definition. The entire framework of a power ranking is typically built on combat potential, on bite force, speed, armor, and lethal weaponry. By these metrics, Therizinosaurus would rank poorly as a fighter. It was likely slow, cumbersome, and its primary weapons were ill-suited for a life-or-death struggle against a dedicated carnivore. While those claws would have been a fearsome deterrent, a last line of defense capable of inflicting a grievous wound, they were not the tools of an aggressor. To rank it on this scale is to fundamentally misunderstand its evolutionary strategy. Therefore, my final verdict is this. Therizinosaurus earns its high ranking not as a warrior, but as an architect of its environment. Its power was not measured in the currency of combat, but in the currency of ecological control. The evidence compels us to create a new category in our rankings, the keystone influencer, or ecosystem engineer. This animal was not merely a participant in its environment. It was a primary force that shaped the very structure of the world it inhabited. The justification for this ranking lies in the cascading effects of its unique feeding strategy. A single adult Therizinosaurus, by systematically pulling down and consuming canopy foliage, would have created clearings in the dense Cretaceous forests. This act of deforestation allowed sunlight to penetrate the forest floor, promoting the growth of a rich understory of ferns and shrubs. In doing so, it created entirely new habitats and food sources for smaller herbivores, insects, and the creatures that preyed on them. Its daily act of feeding could dictate the success or failure of countless other species. Conversely, a small herd could strip a region so effectively that it would force migrations of other large herbivores, like hadrosaurs, that depended on the same resources. This is a terrifying power. The ability to control the flow of life and energy across a landscape, not by shedding blood, but by monopolizing the food supply. A Tarbosaurus could end the life of another dinosaur. A Therizinosaurus could alter the ecosystem that supported generations of them. One is a tactical power, focused on the individual. The other is a strategic power, shaping the entire arena. When we analyze the fossil record as a chronicle of evolutionary success, the ability to fundamentally manipulate one's habitat is among the most potent advantages an organism can possess. My conclusion is that Therizinosaurus sits in a unique tier of its own. It is the great landscaper of the late Cretaceous, a biological force of nature whose influence extended far beyond its immediate reach. Its claws were not for combat. They were the keys to unlocking the forest's resources on an industrial scale, granting it a form of dominance that was quieter, yet ultimately more profound than that of any predator. The story of the Scythe Lizard reminds us that power in the natural world is a complex and multifaceted force, often defying our most primal assumptions. What first appears as a weapon of terrifying violence is revealed by science to be a tool of intricate, world-shaping design. Through the fossil record, we gain a humbling glimpse into these lost kingdoms and the elegant, brutal sophistication of life's long and unending contest for survival.